Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. I train people for improved personal and professional development, offering my assistance to those ready to develop their goals into tangible, focused, and achievable plans of action. And this podcast is one of the tools I use to accomplish my mission. Generally, when the timer hits 9 minutes and 59 seconds on this recording, you'll have a fully developed life lesson that you can take with you and begin to implement immediately. And if this week's lesson has a ring of familiar, then it's probably a reinforcement of a life change you've already started to implement. This podcast falls under the umbrella of my greater personal development efforts, all under the Your Better You brand. For more information on accountability coaching or to gain access to tools, tricks, and life hacks, visit yourbetteryou.info. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Now, here is this week's life lesson. I got a well-deserved chewing out this week. And by this week, I mean 2 days ago as I record this, as this episode is going to be released later this afternoon. So, yes, I'm a little late with this week's episode. Got a little behind in the upwork, But 2 days ago, I got a well-deserved chewing out. And I knew it was coming, although I didn't expect it to come 2 days ago. See, a week prior, I had my checkup, a checkup after a long time and some very long, complicated health and scheduling issues. This was a checkup specifically to check up on my A1C and keep my diabetes and high blood pressure and all those things in check. Oddly enough, things were fine in check and moving great before Thanksgiving, and then a lot of the actions that happened between Thanksgiving, including some seriously distraction actions at the day job and some side gig stuff as well, threw me off my game. And by the time I recovered enough to have some clarity of focus, that was at least just to have a basic conversation with a person without going crazy, I'd gotten off track and had a hard time getting back on. So between November and January, I got really, really bad, and things got really, really bad, and the numbers were really, really bad. 2 days ago, I got a call from the nurse who's my caseworker for a health chair checkup program, basically making sure that I'm maintaining my health, so helping give me some discounts on some of my medicines and coaching as well. We were coached, at least she coached me to a point where these great plans were supposed to be put in action, and she pushed back the actual next call because she wanted me to get my numbers from her next test. And then I gave her my numbers, also letting it slip that I had forgotten that was the date for the scheduled call, me expecting it was a week from that date, and going ahead and giving her the bad news anyway, since there was pretty much no chance I was going to fix anything in 7 days. Something that took months to break and years to really break was not going to be fixed in a week, which she agreed to. But something that she said, the actual point to this, was the trigger that I've heard over and over again for keeping my health going. You want to make sure that you're there to dance with your daughter at her wedding. Now, granted, we had our daughter, my wife and I had a daughter fairly late. And so if she does get married anytime in the soonish area, we'll still be in our mid to late 60s on that end and probably even later. But it was the motivating key that I want to be there for my daughter's wedding, something that I have heard a lot lately that does sort of grate my nerves, but it is a major component of my motivation for pretty much everything. The most important person in my life is my daughter. It should be my wife, but it is my daughter. Even as I was helping my wife go through her cancer treatments, I was helping my wife go through that for the main purpose of her being there for our daughter. So while you can point the finger at the fact that hopefully our daughter will grow up and grow out and leave the house, that's what we're shooting for, it is what it is. The motivation I've had for many of my goals and things in life have been either something personal for myself. It may have been trying to prove to other people that things could happen. It may be being in a bit of distress and having to pull myself out of a hole. But right now, my main motivation is to be successful, to show my daughter what success looks like, and to live a fairly good life on my own. There are other motivations that pop up, including the people out there I get a chance to talk to and help and interact with, being able to work with them and grow and learn from them, and of course, knowing that I am accountable to them in a way. But it all comes down to what actually pushes me to get up and get out of bed in the morning. Motivation is a fickle thing and a fleeting thing, and having the motivation in the moment to do things is not going to last very long. Something will get in the way to keep you from having that quick burst of thought process to do that thing because something shiny will get in your attention and something will change your mind, or someone will tell you that it's not a great idea. There's so many things out there that are looking to kill your progress that your motivational source, wherever you're getting it from, is very important. It is essentially the well that you draw from when you're thirsty, when you're out of that desire to do anything, when you get really tired, when it looks like there's no reason to keep going. You need to know where your motivation is coming from. You also have to have some idea of how that motivation is actually prodding you along. Are you motivated by something negative, by a fear of something, or by something positive, by the joy of something? Are you motivated to go to work every single day because if you don't, those bills won't get paid and someone will take away the belongings that you think you want, but you're just really attached to, stuck paying on? Are you coming from a point where there is joy in you coming up there and people love seeing you and you love seeing people, and everything you do sometimes for the slow, painful, and prodding of just being alive does mean something to you, and it's worth the efforts and even the slow, prodding, painful efforts that it takes to get things done? I can make a fairly good argument for spite being a great motivator because for a long time, my main motivation was being spiteful, doing things in spite of people, having people tell me that there's no way I can pull something off, and then pulling it off to show them and the world. Was this the healthiest motivation I could choose from? Not at all. In fact, it was pretty destructive, but I did get a lot of stuff done and was able to say I've accomplished a lot of things because I was in a mode where trying to prove a point was important. That motivation, spite, is not what motivates me now. As I say, most of my motivation is showing my daughter what a good example of fill in the blank is. She has a lot of the same quirks and just sort of weird things that I had at her age. And so in anticipation of her growing up a lot like me, it's really important to show her what a positive example was because I didn't have that example to live through. Luckily, I'm here to guide her through what should be a better shot at doing more or less what I'm doing right now. And if she chooses to do something else, that's totally fine. In fact, I probably would like that better if she chose a different path. But she gets a chance to choose her path, and I allow her to do that by giving her all the openness that she can to make all the choices that she can towards a better, based on her future, which, of course, is not quite determined yet. In the meantime, I have to make other things happen. And while the big motivation is a great thing to have, it's still a lot of stuff to work on, to include making a business work, doing my job every single day, being in the radio business, the broadcasting business, and the number one thing, which is my health. If you are familiar with my rules of life, my principles of life, the number one rule is, of course, don't die. At least that means don't do anything on purpose to kill yourself, which unfortunately I'm not doing such a great job at. So the motivation to keep going is important. Whether you have good or bad motivation or no motivation at all is the first thing to look for. What keeps you doing what you're doing? If you're just going through the motions because muscle memory and body memory and you're just sort of just doing the same thing because you don't know anything else, then it's time to evaluate where your actual emotions are from and what actually is pushing you to go through, because something keeps you going. Now, having the right motivation can make you do amazing things, sometimes supernatural things if need be. Having a bad motivator will keep you moving, but not exactly in a happy way. This is not going to be one of my greatest episodes because, like I said, I'm running a little late, so that's part of it as well. But it really is a very simple choice of finding out where your motivations come from, what they are, who they are, and why they are. Knowing my whys and my whos and what I'm supposed to turn out with make it much, much easier for me to get up every single day and battle out with whoever I need to be successful. And that's all based on whatever relative metric you want to use or I want to use based on who's looking there. Knowing where you're getting your motivation from is going to be a key to doing anything. That's an obvious thing. The not obvious thing is what to do if you're not quite sure how that should work. We'll put more focus on that side of the spectrum in next week's episode. thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and thank you for putting up with a bit of a not so great effort. Let's say the motivation to do this week's episode was there, but the content was a bit lacking. It's been a very, very long, tiring stretch, as you can imagine, and a very long week with things being caught up. A lot of things are changing in the background that had to be initiated this week, and of course, the surprise that my health check-in call with my nurse was actually this week and not next week threw a lot of that stuff in flux. So that became the very last-minute episode topic. Not sure how well it got presented, but I promise next week when we present the details of changing, shifting, making your motivations work for you will be much, much better. Number one, I'm going to do this well before it's supposed to be published within hours. And number two, this is something I've dealt with plenty of times. As I told you, spite was once my most powerful motivator, and it worked quite a lot too, but spite didn't work very well for my mental or my physical health. And so other things had to be done. So some soul searching from there. And hopefully next week you will learn something from my mistakes. That's how this thing works. I've made plenty of mistakes, and hopefully you learn from them and don't have to go through the exact same steps. Sometimes you have to learn a few things on your own by screwing it up, but not quite as horribly awry as I have in the past. In the meantime, thank you so much again for being here. To keep up with what's going on here, it's very simple. Go to the website, yourbetteryou.info. That's the home for this podcast, 10-Minute Life Lesson, which, of course, in 9 minutes, though it's called 10-Minute Life Lesson, you get a life lesson you can walk away with right now. This week, well, but next week, trust me, it'll be that much better. If you want another one, we have plenty of them. A very short sister podcast called Steps to Your Better You, which you can also find at yourbetteryou.info. That one's only 90 seconds of content. 90 seconds in, out, take it away. Perfect. Keep up with what's going on with us here by going to yourbetteryouinfo at gmail.com. Email us there. Email me directly at jclevelandpayne@gmail.com, or check out my main website at jclevelandpayne.net and see what's going on for other projects. Not the most prettiest site at the moment, but part of the rush work for this week was doing some blowing up of some old conventions and rebuilding. So hopefully in 2 weeks or so, you'll see a call of action, if you will, for more jumping back into the old ways, and hopefully you'll enjoy that as well. Once again, thank you so much for being with us. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, even if this week's performance wasn't quite the par it should be. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on later episodes. Later episodes should be much greater. Share it with friends and family, people who are like-minded, so that we can do our best to share the cause and pause and the plots. Man, I'm horrible today. Of positivity and people who are looking for improvement. It's all about just a little more improvement every single day. It's all you need to do to get better and better sooner than you think. Thank you once again for being here. Next week, I promise it'll be a much more coherent, much more informative, much more better, which is not a real way to say it, better episode for the 10-Minute Life Lesson podcast coming to you from yourbetteryou.info.